Well, good morning, YTPC. This is Dave coming to you from Southern Maryland. It's Sunday morning. It's coming up on 11 o'clock. It's 60 degrees, and the reason it's so warm is that storm is kind of blowing in from the southeast, and I think it's pushing warm air in front of us. The edge of the storm has arrived. It's starting to rain. So we got some windy, rainy weather coming in the next 4 or 5 hours. Feel bad for my daughter because she's going to fly right into it and stay in it pretty much the whole way up the coast, then have to land in downtown DC in it. But she'll be okay. So a couple days ago, my wife came home and said probably the scariest sentence known to man. Hey, honey, I was thinking. Followed up with, hey, I was wondering if you could. And those are never good. But it turned out well, actually. So I'm going to stop the video here. I'm going to insert what she asked me to do and how it ended up turning out. Then we'll come back here. Hey guys, I decided to show you. So my wife came to me the other day and said the most frightening sentence known to husbands. Hey, honey, I was thinking. And then followed up with, I was wondering if you could. And so what she wanted me to do is take down her pot rack and put up a actual sled that she then wanted to decorate and put up here. So we got it mounted. I just thought it was kind of funny. It turned out good. So Greg, Tyler, and I were talking about he's creative and my wife is too. I just end up doing what she thinks of. But it turned out pretty good. Just thought I'd show you guys. All right, so you've seen the sled. Actually turned out pretty good. Kind of these Smarty Bob clickers. So I'm convinced that if you go more than a few minutes without touching it, it takes a click to wake it back up and tell the phone you're going to use it. And then the second click is what actually does whatever you're asking it to do. So I noticed CJ was always struggling with that second click, and Smarty Bob himself the other day was kind of laughing about it. Always takes 2 clicks. So I'm going to be Mr. Helpful and say I think it's pretty much 1 click to wake it up and another click to do what you're asking it to do, whether that be to turn on the video or turn off the video. And I notice that same thing myself almost every time I use it. All right, the pipe today is, guess what? The Maryland Meerschaum. And what's in it? Some Maltese Falcon. GLP Maltese Falcon. So this is another example of that 10 tin where I broke this tin open and put 1 in here and the other 9 went in the cellar. It's my first time. It's my first bowl with Maltese Falcon. I've never had it before. I'm 5 minutes into it and it tastes in the same family as like Mississippi Mud, Early Morning Pipe. Kind of got a musty, tangy flavor to it. We use words that just sound terrible when we describe our tobaccos, by the way. Musty, tangy, dirt, hay. What was Doug on Bean 316? He said one of them tasted like peeling a Band-Aid off smells. That ain't gonna sell too many, is it? I've also heard it tastes like grandma's house smelled. That kind of cracked me up. Anyway, it's good. It's different. I mean, but it's definitely, if you're a fan of like Mississippi Mud or Early Morning Pipe, it's more along those lines. Anyway, I'm coming to you from the front porch today, mainly because the weather's starting to turn on us and got a little bit of rain coming, and I don't want to drag everything out to the fire pit and maybe even light a fire and then have to turn around and run inside. And I can't dangle around too much because we're a few hours away from having to run into downtown DC. My daughter comes into Reagan National Airport today, so by the time I record this and get it exported and get it processed or uploaded, how does YouTube do it? They prepare it, they upload it, they process it. And what I find funny is I get 99% processed, and then it does like the other half of the work. It's like that 1% takes as long as the other 99%. So I think by the time I get this thing done and get it exported, prepared, uploaded, and processed, it might be a couple hours. These things seem to take forever. So I thought today it'd be story time. I'd tell you a little bit about my story. So we're gonna go for a swim in Lake Mee. Talking head video. I don't have any other props or videos for you other than that sleigh one. But in a couple of my videos, we talked about the gap, how we define ourselves in the gap, and how others perceive us in the gap between what happens to us and how we respond to it. And then we've talked about how we use our tongues. And yesterday we talked about if you get squeezed in life, what comes out of you. And I told you I'd take some time in a future video to tell you my story, tell you my journey, kind of tell you where I'm at now. And a couple of you wrote back said you really like to hear that. So the tyranny of the minority, I guess, will win over the majority. And since a few of you said you wanted to, the rest of you either have to listen to this or click off. Hey, click me, click you. All right, so my story begins 12 years ago, pretty much almost today. I don't know the exact date, but I'll tell you what started it was back in 2011, as we approached the Christmas season, we still did Christmas cards. We, meaning my wife. And she said, hey, I'm thinking about switching from writing a bunch of individual cards to doing a Christmas letter. But if you'd like to participate, maybe you could help write the family Christmas letter. In the way that only wives can do, that imply that she's not asking. So I decided I would do it. I wrote a one-page Christmas letter. And I wrote it such that it was like, man, we have such a good life. Our family is in good shape. Our kids are healthy. Our home is happy. Loving life. You know, that typical bullshitty Christmas letter everybody lies in. Well, I wrote this one and I was like, man, I'm pretty proud of this thing. So I got it done. I printed it. I brought it into Anne Marie. I said, hey, I wrote the Christmas letter. You know, take a pen and give me your edits and we'll knock that baby out today. Well, she said, hey, why don't you come on into the sunroom? Well, the sunroom is on the side of the house that if it fell away, I wouldn't probably notice. Then we got a formal living room, a formal dining room, which we eat in there twice a year. And then on the other side of that is my wife's sunroom. I hardly ever go in there. But when requested to go in there, it's usually not a positive thing. And this day held true to that. She said, hey, I read your letter. I was like, oh man, she's gonna knocked it out of the park, baby. And she's like, we live like in two different homes, man. I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, this letter does not represent life with you. If I could do it, I'd show you a meme of a mule getting hit across the forehead with a 2x4 really hard. because my wife hit her mule with her 2x4 really hard. So we had a conversation about how I was always angry and kind of brought the worst of me home. You know, I was tired, probably drank too much at that point in my life, was out too late, worked too hard, short fuse with the kids, no time. So the Christmas letter kind of had the reverse effect, but it was a kickoff point for me. It was what we call a life inflection point, and it did, in fact, change the course of my life. And from December of 2011 to December of 2023, that's 12 years, right? Ugh. Again, I don't feel stupid, but you'd think I'd be able to do that math quicker. Anyway, I embarked upon and am still upon a life change, personality change, character changing journey. But it all came back down to that Christmas letter where I thought I had kicked its ass and I thought I was going to get kudos and knocked it out of the park. And what I got was, bam, this does not represent life with you. Wow. You want a wake up call? Have your wife say to you, this thing you wrote that depicts your life is not the life we have. Wow. Ouch. All right. I guess that's chapter 1. So once you start going down the, wow, I should really figure out where that came from and what's going on with me, I had an epiphany of kind of what was wrong. And it was that I'd started my company in 1994. And now we're in 2011, now 2012 as we progress through the holidays. Was that 18 years? Again, there's that idiot math. 1994, 04, 14, minus 2, 18 years. So I'm 18 years into my company, and it was still hard as hell. And I had this belief that, God, it should be easier by now, man. I've been doing this thing for 18 years. And it wasn't any easier. You know, it was still grueling every day, keeping the company moving and growing and profitable and serving the clients. And we did some very serious things for the very serious customers. People died if we got it wrong. And it was, I lived in a pressure cooker. And so I just started to think, I'm doing something wrong for it to be this easy. So the next part, I wrote some notes. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my notes. So between the Christmas letter, the conversation with my wife, and this soul searching of why is it still so damn hard 18 years in? It should be easier by now. I said, I need to go get help. I need to seek counsel. I need to seek people who are bigger than me, larger than me, who grew faster than me, who can blaze a trail in front of me that I can follow and maybe help me and mentor me along the way. So I started looking around. And I thought, well, maybe I should go to a CEO club. So I joined the CEO Club of America. Turns out the DC chapter wasn't very active, so I also joined the Baltimore chapter, and they were pretty active. They met at least once a month. So I joined them, and I went to their meetings, and I mean, there were probably 20 to 30 of us in each meeting, all CEOs, all owners of companies. And I think once a quarter they did like a huge meeting where everybody would come. It would be in a nice place like on the waterfront in Baltimore, and they would have speakers come in, And I'd say by the second or third quarter, a couple of things that occurred to me. One, these people were more messed up than me. They were smarter than me, starting up, just struggling to even start, life issues. These people were not trailblazing out ahead of me. So they really weren't the mentors I was looking for. But the second or third lunch, so either 6 months or 9 months in, I went to their second or third quarterly lunch, and they had a speaker come in, a guy named Steve Siskold, and he's written 2 books. But when I met him, he had written one book called What's Your Body Telling You? And he's now written one called Whole Body Intelligence. Kind of freaky. You know, he talks about the heart muscle actually has memories just like your brain does. And I mean, there's a whole science behind it. That there are blockages physically in you that hold memories and beliefs that you need to unlock. It's a little woo-woo, a little freaky. It's real, but it certainly is beyond the scope of this video to go much beyond what I just said. So if you want to do it, Steve Siskold is his name, Sisgold. Whole Body Intelligence and What Your Body Telling You. If you want to do some research and you want to do some reading, they're both out there on Amazon. I just checked to make sure this morning. Good dude. Well, I felt like in this room of maybe 300 people, I felt like his hour-long speech was like pointed at me. Freaky. I've never had an experience like that before. So this is probably 2012, 2013. I don't remember what year. Well, I waited for everybody to shake his hand and do the reception line, and everybody left, and there was really just a couple people left in the room, basically him, me, and some of the staff cleaning up. And I went up to him, and I said, "Hey, Steve, is there any chance you do one-on-one consulting?" He goes, "Yep, it's expensive, but I do it. I've got a few clients now. We can do some of it by phone, but I live in San Francisco. You'll have to come to San Francisco if you want me to work with you one-on-one." I said, "Done." I signed up. I did the prerequisite work. And I began a 2-year journey of traveling to Steve's every quarter. I mean, I think I went 8 or 10 times, like 2.5 years, and spent not a couple hours, like 2 or 3 days with this guy. And he became my life coach. And he changed my life. He changed who I was. He got inside of me. I mean, he'd have me lay on the floor in a room with nothing else in it, just me laying on the floor in my sweats. And he would just disassemble me. Oh my God. I hated him on a few sessions. We're friends to this day. We still text occasionally. And he would get around, dig around in me and find these blockages and help me work through them. And then the energy would flow past that point. And the one that broke me, the one that actually turned my life around, is he kept bugging me about my mom. And boy, did I carry some deep, dark hatred for this person. You know, I told you in an earlier video, I didn't have a great home. Learned to get out of there as much as I could. It just was not a good environment to be in physically. You know, kind of beatings every day, beatings for any reason, blah, blah, blah. Cry me a river, Dave. I harbored that decades later. And he finally said, you know she's dead, right? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, you're putting the energy into this, not her. It's not her fault. She did her part. She's dead. You still have all these feelings because you get something from them and you keep re-energizing them. It's your problem, not your mom's. Wow. That one really pissed me off. So clearly, it was obviously true. And it's the truths that kill us way more than anything else. Those things that carve out our false beliefs, particularly about ourselves, ooh, those hurt the most, boys. So we ended that session pretty much with me hating Steve. But through the next few weeks, I accepted that I was the one re-energizing the hatred for my mom mainly. And that realization, that single change in my life changed pretty much everything. In the course of my life changed. And I started becoming the person that's sitting here talking to you now at that point. So that's been 10 years now. So when I say my journey started 12 years ago, it was that Christmas letter. And then the process of the next couple of years after that was really working with Steve and going out there every quarter and kind of getting my guts rooted around in for 2 or even 3 days. I enjoyed it so much that I brought him into my executive team at my company and had him talk to the top 10. And he really changed some of their lives as well. He's really moved on to more corporate events now. I think he does larger groups and larger corporations now, but look him up if you want. Steve Sisgold. At least read one of his books. It didn't stop it. See, that didn't work. You have to push it twice. All right, so the initiation, the life coach, and now we're 2 or 3 years into Steve. I'm kind of ready to move on. And somebody says you should really think about going to a Tony Robbins event. I was like, what? That horse teeth guy in the late night TV? What are you talking about? And like, dude, you got to try, you at least got to try one. And so I kind of did it backwards. One of the big events was a business management group. I forget what it's called, business management level 1. It was only in a few weeks from when I was looking for an event, and it was in Fiji. So I told my wife, hey, I think I'm going to go to Fiji. Tony Robinson has approved me coming in at that level. And she goes, well, then, we're all going to enjoy Fiji. And so we ended up taking a family vacation to Fiji for 2 weeks. The first week I didn't see my kids because these things are 20-hour day events. Brutal. We can talk about Tony Robbins events, but again, that's out of the scope of this video. And then the second week, we had this beautiful week in Fiji because it's on the North Island. It's not on the main island. And so my kids got to see a South Pacific culture where there had been very little white influence, very little Western influence. And so for a lot of families, my 2 kids were the first white small children they'd ever seen. So they got invited to every school and every church. And while I was in class, my family was being dragged around by the locals, and they got to meet everybody. It was a unbelievably good experience. So then I joined with the Tony Robinson group called the Plat Group, or the Platinum Group. At the time, God, this is 10 years ago now. I can't believe it. 8 years ago, they kept it to about 100 people, and so it was pretty meaningful. And Tony lived on Fiji, and so I got to spend some time with Tony in his living room in Fiji. I actually got to know the guy fairly well. And I spent a year traveling every month. We went somewhere else, either in the U.S. or the world, as part of the Plat Group. I had a couple other breakthroughs in those sessions. I allowed myself to get pulled up on stage in front of 1,000 people and got kind of skewered by another, therapist right on stage in front of everybody. But it was good to be that honest. And that's some of the honesty and openness that you see or feel from me now comes from that day. Because when you get torn apart in front of everybody, I mean, you're standing on stage. It wasn't a virtual event. They were all right there. But the feedback I got over the next 2 or 3 days was, wow, I could never have done that. And I can't believe how cool that was. I mean, it's such positive feedback. I decided that was a great way to be in life. So that's part of how I got to where I am today. All right, ends that chapter. So as part of Tony's Platt group, we had BM1 and BM2, Business Management 1 and Business Management 2. And both introduced a guy named Keith Cunningham to me. Keith Cunningham runs a company, at least at the time, called Keys to the Vault. Keith Cunningham, Keys to the Vault. And he offered his own course that was strictly for CEOs and about business. And none of this personality stuff, none of this energy stuff. I mean, totally devoid of what Tony did. And I said, that is really more me. I'm looking for someone to teach me business stuff, CEO stuff, ownership stuff, help professionalize the way I do things. So I joined and went to Keith's council, business council, CEO council. I did that for 3 years. And that, again, that also was every quarter. And that was in Austin, Texas. So for every quarter, for 3 years, you prepare a report and you go to your business council meeting. There were 14 CEOs in that, and some of them are still good friends of mine. You tore your business finances apart. You tore your issues apart in front of Keith and in front of 13 other CEOs. You do that every quarter for 3 years. You get pretty good at understanding what's a real problem and what's not. So it's taken me, now I've told you about 3 counselors. Steve was my life coach. Tony took it to another level, and then Keith was my CEO coach. So three coaches across probably 7 years. So that's a big part of how I got to where I'm about to talk to now. So Keith taught me about less Uncle Dave and more CEO Dave. I didn't like that at first, but it turned out to be pretty damn good advice. A lot of us that own small companies tend to be more like uncle rather than CEO. So we allow behaviors, allow things that really a normal CEO wouldn't do or wouldn't allow. And so he helped me convert that. Helped me convert my finances to be more front and center so that I made business decisions with a financial wrap around it. He taught me things like 100% open door policy is idiotic. Less random access and more planned access. Schedule your issues so you know if they're real issues or not. And what he meant by that was when somebody came to me and said, "Oh my God, I have a huge emergency. Can I see you?" And let's say it's Tuesday. You go, "You know what? It's Tuesday. I'm fully booked. But Thursday at 8, let's sit down and go over it." And once people got used to you being serious about that kind of response and not fanning the flames of their panic, lots of times issues end up getting worked out before they even had to meet with you. He's also the one that taught me at least have 2 weeks out in front of you planned. Know every meeting and every expectation at least 2 weeks out. And my goal was to go a month. And then pretty soon over the course of a year, I wanted my entire year in front of me. Now that doesn't mean there aren't surprises, but that means all the birthdays you're responsible for, all the anniversaries, all the report dates, all the government compliant issues we dealt with, all of the standard deliverables were all calendarized. So everything that we knew of out a year. Now it took us a while to get there. We added like a month. Every month we pushed out another month. So when we got to a year of doing it, we could see out a year. Every proposal was due, every contract that was coming up, ending, every task order that was rolling over. They were all calendarized. So nothing surprised us unless it was truly a life surprise. And those really helped me out. So one of the things I was taught across all these mentors and helpers was your brain is pretty pliable. And so when we think or feel something repeatedly, your brain constructs the path, and that thought gets thought, and then that path gets deconstructed. Then you think it again, and it builds that thought process, and it builds that bridge, and then you're done with that thought, and it breaks it up. But if you keep doing it, if you keep having the same thought or the same emotion or the same response to a stimulus, your brain actually begins to build a hardwired path. Because it's tired of building that. You think you're going to think this shit every day. I'm going to build a path for it. So I got to build a path every day. I'll just build a hardwired neural network path in your brain. So if you turn to drinking every time you get stressed, and you do that every day, eventually it just builds that path, and that's how you're expected to respond, and now it's biological. If you get angry every time somebody causes you a surprise, it builds an anger path. And that can kind of become default. And so now we sit here and we say we want to change our behavior, we want to change our thought process, we want to change our character, we want to change how we respond, we want to change who we are. So I'm going to talk to me, my journey, what I learned. It may not be applicable to you. It might be directly applicable to you. I just don't know. Only you will know. So how do you change? How do you break that up? And so I said yesterday in the video, it's a series of phases. It's not all at once. And so the path that I learned was I have to start noticing when I'm behaving in an old pattern or a pattern that I wish to get rid of. And unfortunately for me, that meant when I heard myself say it, and that goes back to yesterday's, we use our tongues inappropriately. What leaves us defiles us, not what put, So, and 99% of that is what leaves you is through your mouth. And so when I heard myself saying something angrily or inappropriate or demeaning or demoralizing, I would have to stop. And unfortunately, most of the time at phase one, it was actually out. I had actually said it, and I could see in the room the impact that I was not looking for. And I would have to say, after that, I would have to close the barn door after the horse was out. And I would have to say, hey, I need to stop this session, this meeting, this conversation. What I just did, what I just said was inappropriate and not what I meant. And I need to apologize for that. And I need to rewind the conversation, take that back, and start over. And that was pretty effective. Try it. The look on their faces is pretty funny. Because they're like, yeah, man, you're kind of an asshole. So, and unfortunately, phase one, it took me a while to get past phase one. Because I had built so many hardwired neural networks to respond inappropriately, angrily, frustratingly, demeaningly, that it took a while to start breaking that up. And then it takes a while. I could say, well, I'm going to start noticing when I say things inappropriately. But to actually do it took me a while. And then to get good at it, not just once a day, but 10 times a day. And then every time I open my mouth, took probably months to be honest with you, it probably took months for me to get good at hearing this say stupid shit. But once you do, you're ready to move on to the second phase. And my problem with these lighters, they run out. So I had to switch to my Bic. So what is phase two? Phase two is to try to realize, okay, I'm sorry. For me, God, I keep doing that. I really just mean this, what works for me. But I say it like you should be doing it. God damn it, you should be doing it. That's not what I mean. So if I slip up and say it like that, just know I don't mean it that way. So phase two for me was realizing it like while I'm saying it. Like literally cut the sentence off. Wham. You know, when you're like, do you not understand? Sorry. And then do your apology. Do my apology. I'm sorry. I started to say something that really was not appropriate. I'm just going to stop that, even though it sounds weird stopping in mid-sentence. And I'm going to take a different path. You create far less damage in the world if you can cut it off before you get it out there. Phase three is the realization that things happen as thoughts before they turn into words. And so now we're no longer recognizing a sentence has been said. Phase two is we're recognizing it kind of right as we're getting it started and putting it out into the world. Phase three is catching it before it even begins to leave your mouth. You're catching it up here. You're catching the thought. We're recognizing I'm having a really inappropriate thought. I'm forming a really inappropriate sentence, response, admonishment, whatever word you want to use. But you realize it up here. So it's no longer said, it's no longer being said, it's now catching it. And now, if we can get good at realizing in here I'm having an inappropriate response or thought, you're not doing any damage in the world any longer. And that's a monster step. In my opinion, you have really done the world, not yourself, but you have done the world a tremendous amount of good by no longer letting it out. And when you get really good at it, it's amazing. Now, you're still in phase one and phase two, even if you're in phase three, right? You're still going to someday say something and go, I got to pull that back. I'm sorry. You're still going to get it part way out and have to cut the sentence off right in the middle of your sentence and look like a lunatic and pull that back while you're in phase three. Now you're doing all three because it took me 2, 3, 4 years to get comprehensively good at this, where I was no longer, at least without meaning to, putting that shit out into the world. I'm now pretty good at it. Okay, I'm 10, 11 years into the process. I'm pretty good. I'm not perfect. We're not looking for perfect, right? That's the other thing we got to be careful about. I don't think perfect exists. We're looking for damn good. And I think I'm damn good now. I think I can tell in here long before I say it. Now, sometimes I say it and I mean to say it, and that's different. There are times when it is appropriate to hang the millstone around the guy's neck and throw him in the river. There are times when it's appropriate to go build a cat of nine tails and beat the money changers. I want to make sure we don't lose the concept of be dangerous. And there are times when we need to use our words to demonstrate we're about to be dangerous. So we're not looking to completely wipe this out. We want to use it as a tool and not just have it sitting on top of the toolbox. There are other tools we should use. So that's phase 1, 2, and 3. You've said it, pull it back. You're saying it, kill it, pull it back. I've thought it, but I'm not going to say it. So phase 4 and the final phase for me was something happens before you start thinking it. You know, the best example for me personally was when someone was being a complete jerk in their car. They would cut you off intentionally. They knew they were going to cause a wreck if you didn't react, but they cut you off anyway. They ran the light anyway. You know, that's for me the best example of I can feel it. Before I think it, I can feel it. And we now, I joked about it, but we call it my dragon heat. I feel it in here. All right. Other people might feel it in their butt or in their legs. I feel it in my chest. I call it my dragon heat. Okay. I can feel the chest tighten up. I can feel the anger physically, emotionally right in here. And I know when I feel that, I'm going to start thinking shit. And it's going to be inappropriate. And it's going to be unhelpful. And then it's going to roll out of my mouth. Okay. So phase 4 for me, the final phase, was realizing I am feeling it. Something has made me uncomfortable. I am feeling it here. The dragon is coming up. I'm going to burn someone's head off, is what we used to say. You know, and so I'm now really good. I can feel it. In fact, it's almost automatic for me now. At 7, 8, 9 years in, I don't even have to, I don't consciously think it. I feel it and I just kind of let it go. Breathe it out. Just say, don't be a jerk. You know, just say it out loud. You know, whatever the coping mechanism that works for you best is. But those are the 4 phases. Those are what I've gone through, and I found them to be pretty effective. I'll just leave it there. Let me think about where I want to go next. All right, I think you've heard everything. Let me see if I can roll this up into a big snot ball and be done and get you guys out of here. So for me, it took me a number of processes. It took me a number of coaches. I went through 3 essentially. It's taken me a decade or 11, 12 years to get here. I had the 4-phase approach to recognizing, you know, from physical emotion to terrible thoughts to starting to say something horrible to actually getting it all the way out. I've got that process down. The recognition process is well practiced in me. I know what causes these things. A big one for me is surprises, forgetting about something, getting caught off guard. So I'm very diligent about my calendar. Even today, you know, everything gets calendarized. Everything that I'm aware of gets calendarized. And if it's recurring, it's a recurring calendar. I use Microsoft Outlook. I can hear the laughter now, but that's what I use. I make sure automatic reminders are set, so I get reminders of things. If they take me a while, they start reminding me 2 weeks out. If they don't, they start reminding me 3 hours out. It's up to you for how long you need to be reminded. So I've started to remove the things that cause the stress. I try to drive in traffic differently now. Pennzoil's not going to pick me up for their team based on how I'm driving on the highway. You know, I don't try to juke into positions. I don't try to run lights. I've just slowed down and been a little bit more calm, you know, in traffic, and try to be a little bit kinder now. So I've turned it around. I try to be kind. If I see people trying to cut off, or I just slow down and let them go, you know. So those are just 2 examples. I mean, I'm sure there are others, but there's 2. That's enough. So manage what causes you to get squeezed, and then try the 4-phase approach, or modify the 4 phases to maybe what works for you. But I promised you guys that I would come out and tell you my story. This is probably way too long. I shudder to think about how many pieces I've filmed, videoed, and when I stick these all together, how long this is going to be. So, but I wanted to honor my promise. I wanted to give some respect to how we can make real change in our life and become maybe a little more logical, a little more easier to be around, a little easier to love, a little easier to be friends with, maybe a little easier to seek advice from. if you're calmer and more loving when you're in general in life, I think people may feel more comfortable asking you questions or asking you for advice or counsel or to be their mentor. I don't know. Guys, I hope this rings true. I hope you got something from it. Ugh, you know, who knows? It could be a total disaster, or maybe you guys will love it. I have no idea. So I appreciate your feedback. Ask me questions. You know, give me some direction. Where should we go? This is enough. Stop this immediately. You know. Anyway, guys, have a great Sunday. I'm going to go get my girl. It's gonna be a good family afternoon. Hope you're having a good weekend, and hopefully we'll talk again tomorrow on Monday. Bye, you guys.